Wanted to talk a little Saints Raiders here in the middle of the week, Jeremy. Obviously, a monster game for the Saints. Eventually, we will not say that anymore if you continue to lose, but it still is right now. That fact just simply remains. This Raiders team has not gotten off to an awesome start, but they have found themselves a little bit lately with the running game. They're third in the NFL in yards per carry. We understand Josh Jacobs is a really talented dude. And one of the stats that stood out to me when checking in on the Raiders and kind of looking at them from a numbers perspective is that, yeah, they're third in the NFL in yards per carry, and they only have 5 20-plus yard runs on the year. Mm-hmm. They're not ripping off big plays and skewing the stat sheet with 185-yarder. They're just continuing to hammer you for 4, 5, 6 a pop, and that's what's made them a better team. We thought they got Derek Carr, they added Devontae Adams, there's Waller, there's Renfro. Like, they're going to spread it out and throw it all over the place. And they found their identity in the run game a little bit.
Yeah, Jacob is, these past, 4 or 5 weeks, he's probably one of the best backs in football when you factor in the yards he's getting and you factor in the touchdowns. He's playing extremely well, and he's, like you said, he's not one of those running backs that are going to gash you for a 70-yard touchdown and just light the world on fire with his speed. He's a hard-nosed runner. He's got to get those tough yards, and he's got to run his feet. And I thought that's a big factor in why you've kind of seen some of that pressure taken off Derek Carr, and he's not having to deliver you from evil with 50 pass attempts. So I'm sure, when they go into the Saints game, that's going to be, huge on what they want to get accomplished against his Saints defense. They're going to want to get Jacobs going, and then once they get those one-on-one matchups on the outside with Adams, Carr won't be afraid to take those, and kind of you've seen some receivers have some big-time days against the Saints secondary. I think Adams is definitely in line for that, especially if the Saints secondary can't get healthy real fast.
Yeah, I don't know how fast they can get healthy, unfortunately. That's kind of the name of the game to this point. What shocked me is that the Saints are fourth in the NFL in touchdowns scored. And it feels like their offense has done nothing and their defense is not forcing any turnovers. Statistically, the Saints are a little bit of an anomaly to me when I look at where they rank in the league. And I guess this points to being, a poor team. But, like, every stat, they're between, 13 and 21. Like, they're not 29th or 30th in anything but turnovers forced. And turnovers, which I guess that's the biggest point if you keep giving the ball away. But, in terms of, run defense, they're not awful. Pass defense, they haven't been awful. They've run the ball every once in a while. Dalton's got it clicking here and there, throwing the football, not consistently, but it's not like they have these, gross deficiencies that you've got to – I just don't see, what is the thing they do the worst outside of turnovers, which, one, will kill you, and we know that, and two, are not necessarily that predictable. Now, if you got a quarterback that can't stop throwing it to the other team, that is one thing, and Jameis has been that over his time. Dalton hasn't really, but – fumbles and not getting fumbles and that kind of stuff is not necessarily predictable. Things like yards from scrimmage and yards per carry and scoring touchdowns, like that stuff is, they haven't been that bad at it. They just lose close games and give the ball away.
Yeah, and you've seen kind of Ingram put it on the turf a little bit. You've seen, Kamara put it on the turf. You've seen Jameis had a really bad turnover game, and just in this Cardinals game, you saw Dalton do that. But I think for the Saints offense, you have seen that rushing attack, really, especially with Kamara in the lineup. They have been able to hand the ball off to him, and he really has gone over 4 a pop and sometimes 5, and that's something that you can really depend on. And you have seen them really have those big-time plays in the passing game, and that's without Michael Thomas in this lineup. You've seen the rookie make some big-time plays. You've seen Olave, who's just having an electric season. They're getting big plays there, so I think that's where you're kind of seeing, that offense really score more points than you think they have. And then, Taysom's in the mix too, and he's throwing for big touchdown passes. He's running for big touchdown passes. So I think that's where you can kind of see, where those, points come from and some of those big plays. So I think for the Saints, all in all, as cliche as it may sound, just cut the turnovers out, especially when you have a defense that's giving up the big plays that they are. You can't keep putting them out there with short fields, and especially when you throw in, pick sixes in the mix, it just makes it virtually impossible to win football games.
Yeah, I mean, I really did try this morning to be like, okay, let's do a dive here and figure out, what is the biggest issue, and it's just they've turned it over too much, and they haven't forced any, and when you give away your possessions and you give additional possessions and you're mediocre across the board, it catches up to you. And I think that's really the point. I mean, yeah, the Carolina loss looks awful, but you had every chance in London to win the game. Like, you were right in the game to start the fourth quarter against Tampa in the opener. I'm sitting there watching the game. You're right in it. And then you give up the one big touchdown pass by Tom, and Jameis throws it to the other team twice, and you don't get it done. You were right there against Cincinnati and had a chance to win the game and couldn't get it figured out. It's not as if they're not close. Not to use a Jimbo Fisherism here, but we're not like they're getting run off the field. They're not getting run off the field. They're just not good enough to overcome the stupid stuff that they do. Yeah. And I can't promise you that they will. I can't promise you they're going to get healthy. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be in 3 weeks. Like, there's a lot I don't know. But I tried to paint this thing as ugly. Like, what is the deal? And none of it looks awful. It's just all mediocre, which is not going to win enough games.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in no matter what's kind of taking place, you are what your record shows. And for the Saints, you're 2-5. And normally when you see a 2-5 team on your schedule, we're probably gonna beat those guys. We're probably not gonna have much trouble with those guys. And you've kind of seen them kind of have those bad plays that rear its ugly head. Whether it's them giving up a big touchdown to Jamar down the sideline, you miss 2 tackles and he just trots in the end zone and he's punting the ball into the second row. And then you've kind of seen them when they had success. They've kind of had to rally and do it. So they've really never this whole season been able to put 4 quarters together and really have a great brand of football that you really kind of build off of and build it to the next week. And then you factor in all the injuries that they've had to deal with this season. It's just kind of, they are what their record shows, and that's a 2-5 football team.
And the Raiders are what their record shows, but I could have the same conversation when I'm talking about them. They go against the Chargers on the road week 1, you lose a 5-point game. Then you play a home game against the Cardinals, you lose by 6. Then you go on the road to Tennessee, you lose by 2. Then you found a way to beat the hapless Broncos offense and got a win there. Then you went to Arrowhead and played a competitive game, lost by a point. Probably should have won that game, quite frankly. Then you go to Houston and you take care of them because they stink on ice. But you could flip this. You could flip them to 5-2 instead of 2-5. It wouldn't take that much effort.
No, you wouldn't, and that's why the NFL is such a really cool league when you really think about it. Because every Sunday you're just a play away here, a couple plays there, and it can really change the whole complexity of your season. Because when you're playing in so many of these tight games and you have a turnover and you kind of give the game away, you can really look back at your season and realize, man, things could really, really go different for this team. And I think for the Saints, you're scoring so many points against that Cardinals defense. You take out those pick sixes, it's like, man, we could have won that game. You're playing a bad Bucs team, and Jameis turns it over the way he does. It's like you can win that game. And then the Vikings game as well. It's like you get so close to winning that one. You can really
hit the crossbar.
Yeah, you can really kind of look at this Saints season and say, kind of like you said with Jimbo, you're not getting absolutely obliterated Sunday after Sunday. You're in some of these games. You just got to kind of cut these turnovers out and try to get healthy. I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me. It's like they just, for whatever reason, just can't get that full team on the field on any given Sunday. And when you're missing so many guys, you kind of saw the Bengals take full advantage of that when the Falcons didn't have their number 1 guys out there, light you up for 400. And that's kind of what the Saints have been dealing with all year long. You don't have your guys, and it's just forcing you to play with guys who really aren't expected to play that many snaps on any given Sunday.
Not much has gone right for the Saints. We know that, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to get up and go to work, and the environment's just not as good as it is like at LSU right now, where you're feeling good coming off 2 good wins and you think things are trending in the right direction. In that case, does the Saints locker room get a jolt on Friday morning if the Ravens go to Tampa on Thursday Night Football and win? I mean, does that matter to them?
Yeah, it does.
I knew it.
And people always say, like, no outside noise. We don't pay attention. We're just locked into the facility. And we don't have our cell phones. And we don't watch TV. And we don't know what's going on. It's a load of crap. Like, it's just, exactly what's going on every single week. You know what's going on in your division. You're watching the film every week. And anytime you kind of have, a team in your division, especially a team at the top of the division, they lose. That avenue for you to kind of climb up that ladder and kind of take that spot is there for you. So, yeah, the Saints will be paying attention to what's going on. And if the Bucs somehow find a way to lose this game, the Saints will definitely, have that extra boost to kind of, hey, we're not out of this thing. We can still do it. But even if the Bucs win, they know they're still not mathematically eliminated. So they're going to continue to try to find ways to fight. It's just a matter if they can go out there and execute that.
Saints and Raiders in the Dome on Sunday at noon.
Thanks so much for watching Hunt Hill on YouTube.
Now do us a favor. Hit the red subscribe button below and throw us a like. We'll see you next time.